Hello everyone and welcome back to another YouTube video. So today what we're going to be talking about is how you can go about making a realistic lava lamp type simulation in Blender. So I went with a couple methods. You'll see on screen I'm playing the first method that I went with. So this is about a minute animation. It took like 36 hours to render. I could have optimized it a bit better, but basically this first simulation was me testing about how you might go about this with Blender's fluid simulations. Now you notice it looks okay at the beginning, and it looks a little messy at the top right now, but it really falls apart in a second, and I'll go over, different methods that I use to go at this certain specific type of render. The main problem with lava lamps is when basically the fluid inside the lava lamp, when it heats up, that's what makes it float to the top, right? Well, it doesn't always, it doesn't really connect to each other as like right away. So you'll see in this fluid simulation, not only does the fluid kind of merge together, with the settings I have, it kind of falls apart and then it just stops. So I noticed that, with the way Blender's fluid simulations work, it just isn't very viable to make a nice little animation, especially how long it would take to bake the fluid and whatnot. So I used a different feature in Blender called metaballs. So they're not a new thing. They've been around for a while, but basically they are little orbs that you can use that kind of connect to each other when they pass near each other's sphere of influence. So this is the animation that I ended up going with. So this is using hand animated. This isn't a simulation. This is using hand keyed metaballs that flow past each other and then kind of merge with one another. And I thought this one looked the most true to life. It still doesn't look perfect because, like I said, the balls kind of immediately merge together. And if you have a real lava lamp, you know that like the goop or whatever, it doesn't really merge together right away. It kind of floats next to each other, and then after a while it connects. So this is as close as you can really get with Blender. So basically today we're going to go over how you'd go about modeling the lava lamp, animating the actual simulation, or keying the actual effect of a lava lamp, and we quickly go over how to render. And just to show you what metaballs are real quick, they're basically these little spheres. You see if I'm in Blender right now, if I hit Shift A and make a new metaball, they're basically these little spheres that if I duplicate it, you notice that when they get close to each other, they just kind of merge, and that kind of gives you that lava lamp feel. So yeah, it's a pretty easy tutorial. I tried to be as fast as I tried to talk as fast as I could, but it does end up being about 40 minutes. So if you don't want to watch it all right now, just watch it in parts. But I just wanted to keep it as one big video. I didn't want to chop it up into parts. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so this is what we're going to be making today. So you can see we have like a backdrop, we have a lava lamp, we have two light sources right here, camera, etc. So let's just start a new file real quick. So I'm going to go up to File, I'm going to go to New, and then General. So now we have a completely new Blender file. And what we're going to want to do is first I'm going to delete everything from the scene. So we're going to press A, X, delete, and we're going to place in a primitive to make our lava lamp. And a lava lamp is basically just a cylinder. So we're going to go to Mesh, Cylinder. We have a new cylinder, but before we modify it or anything, while it's still a brand new cylinder, we're going to click Add Cylinder. We're going to change the cap type to nothing, so we have an empty top and bottom. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into the side view by pressing 1 on the numpad. And I'm just going to hit G and then Z and move this up a bit. And we're going to go into wireframe. And what we're going to do is we're going to start manipulating this so it looks like that general lava lamp shape. So the base is fine. Let's press B to box select our top vertices, making sure we're in vertex select mode. And I'm just going to scale this in with S so we get like that kind of tapering. And we can move this down a bit. I'm going to hit G and then Z, move it down a little bit. And then now we need to extrude it up, so we're going to press E, and it should lock, or we're going to have to press Z to lock it to the Z axis. And we're going to slide it up a little bit, and then we're going to scale it out again and make it roughly the size of the vertices at the bottom. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then next, all we have to do is extrude up. So we're going to hit E, then Z, and just extrude it up, kind of like that general lava lamp shape, And then now that we extrude it up, we're going to scale it in now by hitting S. And I think we can go a little bit higher, so I'm going to hit G and then Z again. There we go, because remember, we need some room for the cap, and we want enough glass to be visible. I'm actually going to move it up a little bit more. And now I'm actually going to hit Control R to make an edge loop. You can see there's that little yellow line. Alternatively, you can come over here and click on, which one is it? Loop cut right there. You click that, but I'm going to hit Control R and then click, and then we're going to slide this up till we roughly have a cap size at the top. And then I'm going to left click to place it there. So you can see we already have our basic lava lamp shape. Now I'm also going to fill in the bottom and top. So I'm going to click this. I'm going to alt click this ring down here to select the entire ring, and I'm going to hit E to extrude, and I'm going to right click to leave it right on top of the other vertices we just extruded. But then I'm going to hit Alt M, and I'm going to hit Merge at Center to merge all these vertices at the center, so we have a nice base. And also while we're here, we're going to bevel this, because you notice if we tab out of Object Edit mode and give it a shade smooth, you see how it looks very buggy on the bottom. So I'm going to tab into Edit mode, and I'm going to alt click this ring, and I'm going to hit Control B to bevel it. And I'm going to mouse wheel up 1 to add another loop cut you see there. So I'm just going to mouse up once to add a nice little loop cut there, and then we're going to click to place, left click of course, and you can see we have a bit more supporting faces for the normals. I'm also going to do the same thing up here, so I'm going to alt click, E, right click, and then Alt M and click at center, and then they merged at the center. So remember, I basically just extruded, right click to place it where it was, and then hit Alt M while they were all selected. And then we're going to bevel this top one as well. And you can see we already have our general lava lamp shape. And I'm also going to do an additional step. With our lava lamp selected, I'm going to go over to the Object Data panel, and I'm going to drop down the Normals tab, and I'm going to click Auto Smooth. And it looks like we can leave it at 30 for now. We don't really need to manually do anything. You'll notice when we turn that on, it kind of sharpens these edges down here. So this is with it off, and when I turn it on, it'll basically auto sharpen that. So our lava lamp just looks that much crisper. It would have done the same for the top and bottom, but I applied a bevel anyway, so it doesn't need to do that. So next we want to do is we want to apply our material. So for that, I'm going to go to the Shading tab up here, and you can see now we have our windows set up so we can actually properly add materials to this. So materials are actually very simple for this. Let's go to the Material tab right here. I'm going to add 2 materials. The first one is going to be a metal texture, so I'm going to name this Metal. Then we're going to hit plus to add another one, and then we're going to hit plus right here to create it, and name this one Glass. So we're going to have that blue material and that glass material. So let's start with the metal. With the metal, first we want to change the base color. So we want it to be like a light blue, something like that. So that looks good. And then since we want it to be metallic, we're going to take the metallic slider and we're going to set it all the way to 1 because it's 100% metallic. And you could change the roughness if you wanted right here. I personally like the kind of foggy look, so it isn't purely reflective like this reference ball right here. But if you wanted, you could bump this down and you'll see it'll basically become like glass. And alternatively, you can take it all the way up so it's basically like a really rough metal. But I think it looks decent at 0.5, so we're going to leave it right there. And remember, this isn't with cycles rendering. This is just a materials tab, so it will look a lot more realistic when we do the ray tracing later with cycles. So that's basically it for the metal texture. Now we want to make the glass texture, but you notice that right now it's all metal when we want half of it to be glass. So what we're going to do is I'm going to hit 3 on the numpad to go into a side view. It doesn't matter if you hit 1 or 3, you just want to be in one side view. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab into Edit mode. I'm going to go to Face Select. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Wireframe, and you'll notice that these little dots are around here in the center of all these faces. We want to select those dots in Face Select mode. So I'm going to hit B to Box Select, and I'm going to box select all these faces right here. And then I'm going to make sure my glass material is selected. I'm going to click Assign. And that'll basically make sure that this middle portion is glass that we just selected. So I'm going to tab out of Edit mode, go back into Material View, and you'll notice now it's that white default texture that we have here. Now, because this isn't a realistic cycles render and I don't feel like adding in a light, we're going to click on the Preview tab right here to get a preview of our material with cycles rendering, as opposed to doing it in the viewport. And what we're going to do is all we have to do is take this Transmission tab right here, and we're going to set it all the way to 1. So basically we make this glass material. But you notice it's kind of too foggy in the preview if I make it a bit bigger. It's like a foggy glass you might have on like, I don't know, like a separator in an office, but we want it to be see-through. So all we have to do is take the roughness all the way down to 0. And you'll notice it's basically 100% clear see-through glass. But another thing I want to do is I want to set the base color to be super clear, so it's 100% see-through. So it's not like foggy and black, you know. I think that looks pretty good. Another thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to add a modifier to this. So it actually isn't just like a shell of a lava lamp. It actually has a bit of thickness for the glass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the modifier tab right here. And let's actually go back into the layout tab so we can see this a bit better. And modifiers, we're going to click the drop down, and we're going to go under the generate tab down to solidify. And you can't see it now, but if I go into wireframe, you'll notice now there's a very thin layer of depth basically. So this isn't a shell of an object, it has like a thin wall. And we're going to bump this thickness up a bit. You can see if I increase it, you can see how small the inside gets, and we don't want it to go all the way. So I'm going to hold down shift to lightly tune this, and we're going to make it roughly about 0.054. Just make sure it looks roughly like that if you're following along. And I actually want to create this geometry because we might have to reapply some of those materials. So I'm going to hit apply, and let's take a look. I'm going to quickly add in a point light because I kind of missed a step, but that's okay. And we're going to go into rendered view, and you notice the solidify actually did a good job. It applied that glass material to the walls like I wanted it to, so perfect. So I'm going to get rid of that light that I just added. So that's basically our lava lamp. Now what we want to do is we want to add in those mesh balls that I was talking about. The meta balls. So what we're going to do is I'm going to tab into a side view right here, and I'm going to just Shift A, and we're going to add in a meta ball. You see it has its own tab. Now there's different types of meta balls. There's balls, capsules, planes, whatever, but all we want in this case is the basic ball. And you'll notice it drops in a really big meta ball that looks like this. Now I'm actually going to change the resolution now for the meta ball. You'll notice it looks kind of blocky, just to kind of get it out of the way. And it seems like, I don't know if this is 100% true, but it seems like all the meta balls in the scene share the same resolution for whatever reason, so we might as well get out of the way now. So you see we have resolution, view, render, threshold, blah blah blah. All we really want to do for right now is we're going to tweak render. So, sorry, was it render? It might be resolution view. Yeah, we want to tweak resolution view. So basically I'm just going to take this slider until you really can't see those rough edges anymore. You see if I tab into wireframe, we're basically just creating more geometry, you see. So I'm going to take that to about, we want it to be pretty high. I'm going to leave it at about 0.05. That might be too high, but you see it looks much more realistic. If I Shift D to duplicate this, you can see it looks really realistic. It does make a lot more geometry, but in this case I want the lava lamp to look super realistic. So anyways, with our meta ball created and our resolution set, all we have to do is I'm going to hit G and then press Z to lock it in the Z, and we're just going to move it up a bit. And you notice it's a bit too big, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab into edit mode, and I'm just going to hit S and just scale this down a bit. And we want it to be barely sticking out of this lava lamp. So what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to tab into wireframe by pressing Z and going to the left. You can see wireframe. And I'm going to tab out of edit mode. I'm going to hit G and then Z and drag this down because we want just kind of like this upper crest to be visible in the glass. So I'm going to bring it down a bit. That looks good. And like I said, now we want to shrink it a bit. So we're going to tab into edit mode, and you know you're in edit mode with the ball either by seeing this up here that says edit mode, or if you see this green line of influence around it. So again, I'm going to hit S, and I'm just going to scale it in until it's barely visible. You can kind of see that overlap right there. I'm just going to make sure that's not visible at all. And if I go into solid view and you 360 around it, you cannot see the meta ball. So that looks good, and you see we still kind of have it sticking out of the top. So I'm going to go back into a side view by pressing 1 on the numpad. Now basically all we really have to do is Shift D and do the same thing at the top. So I'm going to tab out of edit mode and then hit Shift D with our meta ball selected, and then I'm going to press G and then Z, and we're going to drag it up to the top. And I'm actually going to click on the lava lamp to see where that, so here's that glass line that we had. So we're basically just kind of want to line it up like the same way we did at the bottom. So you're going to press, We're going to press G and then Z. Oh, sorry, we have them both selected. Just this one up here. G and then Z, drag it down a bit. And let's see, so this line was right about here. So yeah, I think that's enough. So now all we have to do is select our top ball. And then we're going to scale it down, in edit mode of course, till you can't see it sticking out of the side anymore. See, it's not sticking out of the side. And if we go back into wireframe, you can see that it is sticking a little bit out of the glass. We can actually move it down a bit more. So I'm going to press G and Z with our top ball selected, drag it down a bit. That looks good. Yep, and you can see it's going to be sticking out of the glass a little bit. Okay, now all we have to do is add in some more balls and then animate them. So I'm going to go into the side view again, and with our bottom ball selected, I'm going to tab into wireframe so you can see it a bit better. All I'm going to do is make sure our bottom ball is selected. I'm going to hit Shift D, and then we have another ball. And I want it to be a bit smaller, so I'm going to tab into edit mode, scale it down a little bit. And now all we have to do is animate it. So I'm going to add in just 2 in this scene, but you can add as many as you want. I think I had about 3 animated in the final video that I showed you. So I'm going to make 2 of them, and I'm going to make this one a little bit smaller as well. And basically all you have to do is animate them, and it's pretty easy to animate. All you have to do is, I'm going to put them one starting at the bottom and one starting at the top, and they're going to kind of meet at the center. And this is kind of, personal preference, how nice you want the animation to look, but if you just want to do it real quick, all you have to do is making sure we're on the first frame in the timeline down here. I'm going to select this bottom ball, and I'm going to go to keying, and I'm going to set this key type to just location, because all we need to do is animate the location. We don't need rotation or scale or anything like that. You could change those, but it might, in the case of like scale, it might make it look a little unrealistic. It will look cool though, of course, but anyways, with let's select both balls in this case by shift clicking this upper ball, and on the first keyframe I'm going to go to keying, and I'm going to hit the plus key right here, and you'll notice it'll place these little yellow markers, and that's basically the first keyframe for our animation. So this is pretty important, because if we move these balls at all without adding in a keyframe, they'll always go back to this default position. So for example, let's say I'm on frame 80 and I drag this ball over here, but I didn't place a keyframe. If I move on the timeline, it'll snap back to the beginning because we never added in the keyframe. So let's decide real quick, so how long do we want this animation to be? So by default, the animation will be at 20 frames per second. So that's 24 frames per second. So that's 24 images every second. So if I open up the calculator real quick, so if we want a 7-second animation, we're going to take 7 times 24 frames per second. So we're going to want 168 frames. So I'm going to copy this real quick, and we want our animation to end. You can see right here, here's the end keyframe. We want it to end at 168. You can see it kind of move this grayed out timeline to the end. We can scroll wheel up to zoom in a bit. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to be lazy with it, and I'm just going to animate a straight line. That's it. So I'm going to go to this last keyframe right here. Remember, you always want to be on the keyframe you want to animate before you animate, because otherwise it'll snap. So on the last keyframe, and I'm going to take this ball right here, and I'm just going to hit G, and I'm just going to drag it up and make sure we're inside the lava lamp the whole time. And I'm going to select the other ball at the top that was already at the top, and I'm going to drag it down and place it right here. And then with both of our balls moved, I'm also going to shift click to make sure they're both selected. And I'm not sure if you need them both selected, but I'm going to do it just in case. I'm going to go to keying, I'm going to hit the plus key, and you can see we now have some keyframes down here. So you see it successfully added 6 keyframes. So that 6 keyframes is the X, Y, and Z for both the balls. So we do want 6 in this case, so 3 for both of them. So if I go back to the beginning, you'll notice if I hit play, you can see our balls are moving. So that looks pretty cool, and you can see since they're metal balls, they meshed at the beginning, and it looks pretty neat, If you wanted to play with the timing at all, you could add in some more keyframes. If you wanted, let's say you wanted one of the balls to kind of pause in the middle. For example, this one right here. With it selected, you can just go to keying and then hit the plus. You could hit the plus here, and then you can skip a bit forward, and then, there's a better way to do this. Like you could copy the location from here, but I'm just going to do it quick and dirty, for example. And add into the other keyframe, you'll notice it'll kind of pause in the center. and then it'll go back up. So just kind of personal preference how you want it to look. And of course, make sure you're saving periodically. Control S. I'm going to name this tutorial. Save blend file. So yeah, anyways, now that we basically have our lava lamp and animation did, let's also quickly add a material to our object. So the material for the blobs are actually pretty easy too. I'm going to go back to the shading tab, and I'm going to click this metal ball right down here. I'm going to hit Shift H to single them out. And let's go to the material tab, and we're going to want a new material. So I'm going to name this one blob, I guess. And we still have the preview open, and we're going to want it open in this case. So what we want to do first is we actually want we want to pick our color first. So I want it to stay blue, like the theme of a lava lamp. If you want to copy the exact color, you could click on the color icon, go to the blue texture for the or material for the lava lamp. You can go to hex and then copy this over here. But in this case, I'm just going to kind of eyeball it. And we want it to be a little bit transparent. We basically want it pretty transparent because it's going to be like a liquidy, like, see-through thing. So I'm going to take transmission, I'm going to bump it up a bit. And since lava lamps are kind of like sci-fi, we don't really need it up all the way. We want it pretty close though. I'm going to leave it at about probably pretty close to 1.8, and then probably going to want to bump down the roughness a bit. This is all personal preference, but we just kind of want it to be slightly, didn't mean to touch the sheen. Basically, we want it to be just see-through enough that you can kind of see a little bit what's behind it. So I think that's pretty good. You can almost see the background, and that's actually more of a reflection, but actually we'll take transmission all the way up. I think that looks better. And I'm going to leave roughness around 0.258. But one really important thing is with this, we want a subsurface color. So I'm going to go to subsurface right here. I'm going to set it all the way to 1. And basically this will add that like internal like reflection of when the light hits the blob, it'll like scatter a bit. And we actually want to change the color of the subsurface color as well. So I'm going to change it to a bit of a lighter blue compared to our object. So you can see here's the base color, here's the subsurface, and it's going to give us that kind of like surreal glowy effect. So you can kind of see that in the preview. It doesn't look amazing, but yeah. Maybe if we get a different image, it's kind of hard to tell. But anyways, I think that material looks pretty cool. You can see a rough draft of it in the material tab here. Let's go back to the layout tab. So we have the materials for our balls. I'm going to hit Alt-H to bring everything back. Now basically all we have to do is quickly add in all the other stuff for our scene. So like that background, the camera, the lights, and that's all pretty easy. So I'm going to start with the background. So I'm going to hit Shift-H and then go to Mesh, Plane. So here's our plane. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode for our plane, and I'm going to hit S to scale it up. We want it to be pretty big. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a top-down view like this, and then I'm going to tab out of edit mode, and I'm just going to kind of drag this so that the lava lamp's kind of in like a side corner. And then what I'm going to do, yeah, that should be good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tab back into edit mode. I'm going to go to edge select. I'm going to select these back edges right here. I'm going to hit E and then hit Z to lock it on the Z. I'm going to move it up a bit and then just left click to place it there. And what we're going to do to kind of make that smoothing effect is we're going to add a modifier to it. So with the background selected, I'm going to go to the modifier tab, add modifier, and then we're going to go to generate subdivision surface. You can see that smoothing. Well, we're going to bump up the resolution a bit. We're going to set it to 3. And to make it a bit sharper on the corners, you can see it's kind of too curvy. We're going to tab back into edit mode, and we're going to add some supporting edges. So I'm going to go into wireframe so you can see this a bit better, but I'm going to hit Control R to go into edge loop mode. I'm going to place one here, and I'm going to slide it over. Not all the way, right about here, because we don't want the edge to be too hard. And I'm going to do the same on the other side. And you can see now if I tab back into solid view, you can see we have that hard floor, but it also tapers a bit, kind of like at a photography studio. And we also want this to be a smooth object, so I'm going to go to Object, Shade Smooth, and you can see there's our background. Now we want a camera in our scene, so I'm going to hit Shift-H, we're going to go to Camera, And if I hit G and then Z, here's our camera. And the camera's a bit too small. What you could do is I'm going to hit S and just scale it up a bit so it's easier to see. Alternatively, you can select your entire scene but the camera. Shift clicking it, yep. And you could scale it all down, but in this case I'm just going to make the camera bigger. And of course, if you scale the scene down in object mode, you'll notice scale right now is set to 1:1, but if I scale this down, this changes. So if you do scale it down, you're going to want to press, I believe it's Control A? Yeah, Control A, and you want to apply the scale when you set it to the new smaller size, so there isn't any bugs or anything, just in case. Anyways, let's quickly position our camera. The easiest way to do this is probably pressing 0 on the numpad to go into camera view. If you don't have a numpad, you can hit F3 and type in, I believe, camera, view camera right there, and hit enter. Anyways, in camera view, you want to hit N to bring up the side menu, and you're going to want to go down to lock camera to view. So this will make it now when you move around your scene, the camera is locked with your view. So it's a really easy way to move the camera. So I'm just going to kind of zoom in on the lava lamp a little bit, make it look mostly center. And then I'm going to click this to turn this off when I'm happy with where the camera is, and I can move around and you can see the camera stays there. Now what we want to do is add in some lamps. So I kind of like those like 4 square lamps. Kind of adds like a nice diffuse soft shadow look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift H and add in a basic plane right here. And I'm going to hit GZ to move it up a bit so I can see it a bit better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tab into edit mode and just scale it up so I can see it a bit better, make it so it's a bit of a bigger light as well. And let's get rid of this background. So I'm going to click on the background, hit H. And basically, to quickly make this 4 panels, we're going to go to Add Modifiers, Array. You can see it moves it over a bit. We're going to set the relative offset to 0.12. And we're going to copy it. And then we're going to add another array, and you'll see now it makes a copy of it, but it keeps that initial array generated, if that makes sense. And we're going to go down to the new array modifier we just added. We're going to set the X offset to 0, and then we're going to set the Y offset to that 1.2. And you can see now we have those 4 panels, basically. And now what we want to do is we're going to add a quick emission light. So I'm going to go back to the shading tab, and you can't see it really in the material tab, but I'm going to hit new material. I'm going to name this to light. And we actually don't want the principled shader, so I'm going to select this and hit X to delete it from the node. And I'm going to hit Shift A, and we want, let's get rid of the preview. And then we're going to hit Shift A, and then I'm going to go to shading, and we want an emission shader. So I'm just going to connect that to the surface output. And it's actually easier to tweak in the rendered view. So let's go to Layout. I'm going to hit Alt-H to bring our background back so we can actually see the light bouncing. And if we go into rendered view, let me make sure I have GPU enabled. If your computer is a bit slower and you have a GPU, you probably want to set it to GPU enabled. Let's go into rendered view, and you can see our light isn't quite bright enough, so I'm going to go to the material tab again, and if we tweak this strength modifier in the emissions shader, it'll make this brighter. So I'm going to scale this up to probably about like 9 or 10. I think 10 looks good. You can see how much brighter it is. So let's turn off rendered view so we can move this. So I'm going to hit 3 on the numpad to go into the side view. I'm going to press G, and I'm just going to kind of roughly move this over, and I'm going to hit R to rotate it so it's kind of like at an angle. And then I'm going to hit G and then X to move it on the X, and I'm going to hit R to rotate, and then Z to rotate on the Z axis, and we'll kind of angle it over a bit so that it's kind of roughly above the camera like that. And you can see now if I go into rendered view, we kind of have that like soft shadow on the lava lamp. And if we go into the camera view by pressing 0, you can see what that looks like. And there's our cool looking orb inside the lava lamp. So our scene's almost finished. You can see we still have the render of the balls and everything, and how cool that looks, you see. But we're going to want to add a couple more things. First, I'm going to add in a light. I kind of forgot to do that. So you know how lava lamps, they use a heat lamp or a heat light to actually warm up the liquid, then they go to the top. Well, it also is usually like a colored light. So like in this case, I think a nice blue light would look pretty cool. So I'm going to go into wireframe so we can see through our object, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Shift A, and we're going to add in a point light right there. So I'm going to go to a side view to see this a bit better. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit G and then Z, and I'm going to put it right about where that blob was, right there. And I want the influence to be only inside the lava lamp. I don't want it outside. So right now it's inside. You can see that little radius signifier. So what I'm going to do is with the point light selected, I'm going to go to the object data tab right here. You can see the point light turned into like a little circle. And we're going to tweak the size to where it's barely against the edge. We don't want it to be outside like this because the light will actually shine directly like through the object a little bit. So we're going to leave the size right about there. Then what we're going to do is we're going to change the color to a nice blue, probably like a hard blue like that. You can see now if I go into rendered view, you can see our blob on the bottom is a lot like brighter. It's like a really bright blue. And if I hide the camera or the panel light, we can actually see just how much light is coming off the point light. So we can also tweak the strength. So I'm going to bump the strength up a bit, probably around like 234. So it's like a really bright light. So that looks good. And another thing we want to do is we actually want to tweak the glass real quick, because glass in Blender is a little bit finicky when it comes to ray tracing. So let's go to the shading tab, and then let's make sure making sure our lava lamp is selected. We're going to go to the glass tab, and we're going to pull this right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to use this weird hack that you can do with Blender's rendering engine, or for cycles, by however you pronounce this name. Basically it's a node set up like this, so I'm going to show you on my screen. So basically what you're going to want to do is, making sure we're on the glass material, we're going to hit Shift A and we're going to search light path. We're going to add this in, and then what we're going to do is we're going to hit Shift A again, and we're going to go down to, I believe we can just type in math. Yep, we're going to type in math in the search tab. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the shadow ray, and we're going to put this in the top value, and we're going to take reflection ray, we're going to put in the bottom value, and we're going to set this to maximum. Maximum right there. And then what we need is we're going to disconnect this for now. We're going to need a mix shader. That you're going to want to make sure you have the one with the factor, not an add shader. And what we're going to do is we're going to take our glass material and we're going to put it right here on the top one. And then what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get a transparent BSDF. Make sure it's transparent, not whatever the other one was. Was it transmission? Oh, let me just double check. Yeah, you don't want a translucent, you want a transparent. And we're going to put this one in the bottom one. The color shouldn't matter, I believe. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the value of this maximum, put it in the factor, and the shader in the surface. And that will basically allow light to better go through our object. I don't know if you can really tell, but the inside does look a lot brighter, and it's thanks to this outside light. So you definitely want to want this hack for glass materials usually. So with that done, the last thing we want to do is if you want to do this last part, I think it adds to the realism a little bit. We're going to add a power cord real quick. So I'm going to keep just the background and the lava lamp, so I'm going to click both of those and then Shift H to single them out. And what we're going to do is we're going to add in a curve, a bezier curve. I'm going to press G and then X to move it out of the way. And actually we should be in the layout tab to see this a bit better. So I'm going to click this layout button up here. And here's our curve. You can see it's a little small, so we can scale it up a bit. And let's hit G and then Z to move it up a bit so it isn't directly on top of the plane. And I'm going to go into a top view by pressing 7 on the numpad. And what we're going to do is we're going to move these arrows so they're pointing into the lava lamp. So I'm going to take this point right here, and the direction of the arrows is pretty important. So I'm going to kind of reposition these a bit. And I'm going to just rotate them while on the top view and place them behind the lava lamp. So one there, and you'll notice it's a bit too much of a sharp angle. So I'm going to click this vertex right here and then shift click the other one. And right clicking in Blender 2.8, I believe you can press W in Blender like 2.7. We're going to hit subdivide, and you'll notice it'll add another vertice that we can actually use to influence the cable. So I'm going to make it look like a cable's kind of like naturally stretching into the lava lamp. And we're going to make it look like it's kind of running off in whatever directions back here. Kind of like that. So if we go into the camera view, you can see it's going to kind of look like that. It might be a little too long, but it's not that big of a deal. I'll just kind of move this over a bit. And what we're going to do is we don't really need to do anything special. We're just going to kind of make this look like a cable. So going over, making sure this object's selected, we're going to go over to the object data. You can see with the curve, it looks like a little curve. And what we want to do is we're going to drop the geometry tab, and we're going to set fill mode to full. And we're going to bump up the extrude a bit. You can see it makes like a little ribbon, kind of like a ribbon cable or something like that. But we also want to bring up the depth right here. And you can see when we add the depth, it kind of starts looking like a cable. But we want the extrude to be similar to the depth, so let's kind of eyeball it. And you'll notice it still looks a little too blocky. So let's take the resolution for the depth and just kind of bump this up a bit till it looks nice and smooth. Maybe the extrude is still a little bit too high, so let's just kind of nudge that in a bit. And if you hold shift, remember, you can finely tune these values when you slide them. So that looks good. It looks a little too big though, as you can see. So let's take the depth down a little bit until it looks like a nice little cable. Just kind of eyeballing it, you know. That looks good. And it's perfectly flat, so what we can do is we can go into a side view by pressing 3. Then we're going to hit G and then Z, and we're going to make sure it's kind of just lying on the floor like that. So that looks good. And while we're at it, let's just, with the object selected, we'll go Object, Set Origin, Center of Mass, and it'll move that little orange dot closer to the center. It's not that big of a deal, but it looks a bit nicer. And we want our object to be kind of intersecting the plane a little bit, so let's move it down a bit more. We don't want it to look like it's floating, because otherwise it'll add like a weird shadow under it. So you can see it's intersecting just a little bit, so that's fine. And then let's quickly add a material. We don't even need to do anything special for this. Go to the Material tab, hit New, name it Chord, and we can check the preview if we want. We'll just set it to a nice black, like that. And if you want it to be a little reflective, you can do that, but I'm going to bump up the roughness. We'll just bump it all the way up to 1, since it's not too big of a deal. So let's go into our camera view and see what we've got so far. Oh, I'm going to hit Alt-H to bring back everything into our scene. And you can see there's our lava lamp. It looks pretty cool. So yeah, now all we really have to do is set it up for a render. So I'll show you how to do that real quick if you don't know how. So if you want a wide view like this, you can leave it like this, but if you want to save on render time, and especially if you're going to upload this to like social media, you only really need a block, like a 1x1 cube, or a 1x1 square, because, you know, especially on mobile phones, it'll just kind of stretch this out a bit and add like black lines and whatever. So the way you can edit this in Blender 2.8 is you go to the Output tab right here. Yeah, just Output. And I'm going to just set the X resolution to the same as the Y. So I'm just going to copy and paste. And you notice when I do that, it makes it a perfect square. You might want to zoom in the camera a bit. So I'm going to lock camera to view, zoom it in a little bit, like that. But yeah, see, we have a perfect square now. So now your images that you output will be at a resolution of 1080 by 1080. So you can change that if you want. We'll leave frame rate at 24, because that's pretty much what you want. You don't want it to be super high frame rate, especially since it's an animation. It'll just be more rendering for you. And you also want to make sure you set your output. So I'm going to click this little folder, and I'm going to go to that lava lamp tutorial folder that I have. And if you want to make a new folder in Blender, you can just click this little plus folder icon and name it. So like, oh, excuse me. I'm going to name it tutorial output, and then hit enter. And I'm going to go inside the folder and then hit accept, and you'll notice now the output will output all the pictures to tutorial output. And for animations, you're going to want to leave file format to either PNG or JPEG, because you don't want to actually output it as a video file like a AVI or whatever MPEG video. Because for example, let's say your Blender crashes, or let's say you want to stop rendering and come back to it later. If you do it as images, you can later stitch those images together with like Adobe Premiere or whatever video software you want. But if you have a video file, it'll just stop and be either corrupted, or you can't continue the animation again, really. So you're going to want to leave this as an image so you can later stitch them together. You can see, like I have here in my output folder, you can see here's all the images for the animation that I later put together. So that looks nice and cool. And yeah, so basically, if your scene's all set, your animations are good, all your objects are visible, so you probably want to do a test render. So go to render, render image, and if everything looks good, you don't have any missing items, you can just go to render and then render animation, and it'll start going through, and you see it'll go render an image, and then it'll just send it straight to your folder. Couple more things that I found. So for example, like I said, if let's say this cable for some reason, let's say it just wasn't showing up in your render. Oh, I think I might have hit the wrong button. Okay, yep. So let's say, for example, some of your things just weren't showing up in your render. Like, see, the cable's missing now. It might just be that you have render turned off for whatever object it is. So for example, if I find the object that wasn't rendering, if you go to the object tab up here, you'll notice the little camera icon here is turned off. So in this case, it'll mean that this object is invisible in the render, so we want this turned on. Just little things like that. This cable might actually be a little bit too low res for your liking as well. Not necessarily in like the circumference of it, but like, let's see here. But see how it's a bit too blocky right here? You can fix that by going to the curve settings, and if you change the resolution right here, you see if I bump that up, it'll add more like segments. So that's a quick fix for that. Another thing you might want to do is tweak your samples. So let's say your animation doesn't look let's say it looks very noisy. You can always bump up your samples, but if you're doing an animation, you probably want to stay around 300. The higher you go with that, the longer it's going to take. It's going to take a really long time if you have a longer animation. And a quick way to fix that noise is you can go to right here. What is this tab? The view layer right here. And if you turn on denoising, it'll kind of add a smoothing effect to get rid of all that noise. It will make it look a bit blurrier though. It kind of looks like applying like an Instagram filter, but it makes your images less noisy, so you can keep the sample rate down low. So I used denoising on all my renders. You want just enough samples so that the denoiser can accurately smooth it out without losing all that fine detail. But yeah, that should be all for this tutorial. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them down below. This tutorial was much faster than my other ones, but I kind of wanted to keep the video length as short as possible for a tutorial like this. So yeah, if you have any input, leave it down below. If you want more videos like this, please subscribe so you can be updated for when new ones come out. But yeah, have a good one.